This is part two of the murder at Karlov Manor Relevant Recon, which is a black-blue commander deck. The next card from that I didn't go over the last time was Massacre Worm, which is a 6/5 Phyrexian worm for 3 and 3 swamps. When Massacre Worm enters a battlefield, creature your opponents control get -2/-2 until end of turn. Whenever a creature an opponent control dies, that player loses 2 life. So, you know, pretty big creature that when it hits the battlefield, if your opponent has a bunch of little tokens, some 1/1s or even 2/2s, bam, clears their board of those little creatures, pings your opponent for 2 life for each of their creatures that's dying, so, pretty decent. I mean, yes, it's 3 and 3 symbols, but, for what it does, it's pretty good. Next we have Overseer of the Damned. It's a 5/5 demon for 5 and 2 swamps. It has flying. When Overseer of the Damned enters the battlefield, you may destroy target creature. Whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token. So pretty cool that you're getting rid of an opponent's creature, and if it's whenever a non-token creature dies, you're getting a token. Phyrexian Arena, it's an enchantment for 1 and 2 swamps. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card and lose a life. I mean, black is, normally has some kind of a drawback of, loss of life or sacrificing a creature, but you're getting card draw, um, pile on. It's an instant for 3 in a swamp. It has a convoke, which the reminder text lets you know your creatures can help cast this spell. Each creature you tap while casting the spell pays for 1 or 1 mana of that creature's color. Destroy a target creature or planeswalker to veil 2. The reminder text says look at the top 2 cards of your library and then put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest on the top of your library. So not only are you getting to um, destroy a creature or planeswalker, you're also getting to look at the top 2 cards and decide if you want them to stay there or go to your graveyard. If you have something to return stuff from your graveyard to the battlefield or to your hand, that'd be cool. But it also just, you know, helps with um, card drive. The next card is not what you're looking for, put it into the graveyard, and better odds of something you might want the next draw. So 2 things for the price of 1. Next is Reanimate. It's a sorcery that costs a single swamp. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to its mana value. So kind of interesting. I was talking about how, the surveil part, is helpful on top of, destroying a creature for that last card because then, if you did surveil a card into your graveyard, then you might be able to get a creature back if you happen to have the reanimate card and um, pile on, which was the last card at the same time. Rise of the Dark Realms. It's a sorcery for 7 and 2 swamp, so obviously a little bit higher mana cost than some cards, but usually you get what you pay for. Put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. So, you play some kind of board wipe, everything goes to the graveyard, then you play this, you get not only your creatures back, but all your opponent's creatures in their graveyard. Um, you know, so you turn the tables quick if you have the mana for it. Toxic Deluge. It's a sorcery for 2 in a swamp. As additional cost to cast a spell, pay X life. All creatures get minus X until end of turn. So it's a board wipe that you're, instead of just saying destroy target creature or destroy all creatures, you're um, doing damage to toughness. So um, may or may not be beneficial because it's not saying destroy. Next is Twilight Prophet. It's a 2/4 vampire cleric for 2 and 2 swamps. It has flying and ascend. The reminder text: if you control 10 or more permanents, you get the city's blessing for the rest of the game. Which, I've seen a couple of cards with this ascend ability on Magic the Gathering Arena, but I haven't seen a lot of them in physical card form, which obviously there are some. We have one here. It's just I haven't seen a lot of them. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have the city's blessing, reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. Each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is that card's mana value. So I mean that's pretty cool. You're getting um, card um, card draw and you're doing damage to your opponent while gaining life yourself if you have the city's blessing, which is controlling 10 or more permanents, and where it says permanents, it doesn't specify what kind of cards. I'm pretty sure, land is included in addition to like creatures, artifacts, enchantments. Um, so, I mean, you could have like 5 land out, um, you know, 2 artifacts, like some mana rocks, and 3 creatures, and that's 10. That'd be pretty easy to get, assuming your opponent's not continuing to play counter spells or removal. Baleful Strix. It's a 1/1 bird for an island in a swamp. Has flying and death touch. When Baleful Strix enters the battlefield, draw a card. So, I mean, yes, it's only a 1/1, but it's flying and death touch. So, if your opponent doesn't have flying or reach, you're paying them for 1 damage every turn. If they do, are they willing to, you know, sacrifice a creature to, deal with this guy? And, then you have the benefit of card draw when it enters the battlefield. So, a cheap little creature, but has the, um, you know, card draw benefit to offset the low power toughness. Next, we have, a double card. Um, the one side's a sorcery for two Islander Swamp and then another Islander Swamp. So convert mana cost of four, but you're, picking which of the two mana um, symbols you want to play um, for connive, gain control of target creature was power 2 or less. And then the other side is Conquered, which is also a sorcery for 3 island in a swamp. Surveil 3, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So again, you're kind of stacking the deck how you'd like and discarding what you don't like into your graveyard to then get a creature card from your graveyard and put it on the battlefield. It doesn't even have to be one of the cards you discard. It could be, a creature that was already in the graveyard before you played that card. So that's pretty cool. Lazov, the multifarious. It's a 1/3 shapeshifter, and it happens to be a legendary creature, so you could play it as a commander. It costs an island in the swamp. When Lazov, the multifarious, enters the battlefield, surveil 1. The reminder text tells you look at the top card of your library. You may put it into your graveyard or on back on top of your library, which is a little redundant to say that, I guess. If it's Surveil 2, Surveil 3, it specifies because you're looking at more than one card. Um, and then down at the bottom, you can pay X. Last off, the multifarious becomes a copy of target creature card in your graveyard with mana value X, except its name is Lazoth the Multifarious. It's a legendary in addition to its other types, and it has this ability. So that's kind of cool. You can, make this guy a copy of, another creature, and it still retains that ability. So you could make it a copy of another creature later on in the game. Master of Death. It's a 3/1 zombie wizard for 1, a island in a swamp. When Master of Death enters the battlefield, surveil 2. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, put any number of them into your graveyard, and the rest on top of your library in any order. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Master of Death is in your graveyard, you may pay 1. If you do, return it to your hand. So that's pretty cool that you have the ability to get this creature back. Like, yes, you're paying a life, but life is a resource, and that's better than having to get another card just to get that creature back where it has that ability on the creature itself. Next is Chalked Estuary. It's a land as Chalked Estuary enters the battlefield. You may reveal an island or swamp card from your hand. If you don't, Chalked Estuary enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it for either an island or a swamp. Darkwater Catacombs. The land that you can pay 1 and tap it to add a island and a swamp to your mana pool. So instead of tapping for one mana and it being one or the other, you're paying one mana to get two mana and it's one of each color. So kind of a trade-off, I guess. Drown Your Temple. It's a land that taps for a colorless, or you can pay three, return Drown Your Temple from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So, I mean, I guess if you had someone playing removal, or if you surveil that into your graveyard, you could pay three to return to the battlefield. Fetid Pools, the land, island, swamp. In parentheses, it tells you tap to add an island or a swamp. Fetus, or not fetus, feeded pool enters the battlefield tapped. Cycling 2, and the reminder text, um, pay 2 mana, discard this card to draw a card. Hostile Desert, the land desert, kind of ironic that it's deserts in the name and that's the subtype of the land. Tap to add a colorless, or you can pay to exile a land card from your graveyard. Hostile Desert becomes a 3/4 elemental creature until end of turn. It's still a land. So, I mean, there's a drawback to um, making creature and a land where, you're exiling a land to make it a creature, but in specific circumstances, it'd be helpful to have a land become a creature to attack. River of Tears, the land that taps for an island. If you played a land this turn, add a swamp instead. So very niche, one or the other um, color depending on what you do. Next is Sunken Hollows. So land, island, swamp, and the parentheses says tap to add an island or a swamp. Sunken Hollows enters the battlefield tapped unless you control two or more basic lands. Brainstorm. It's an instant, draw three cards and put two cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. Cost a single island. I feel like this is a fairly old card. I don't know if it goes back as far as alpha and beta, but I remember that's an older card. Consider, it's an instant that costs a island. Surveil, look at the top card of your library you may put into your graveyard. Draw a card. So, if you don't like the card that's on top of your library, you can put it in the graveyard to have, I don't know if I'd say better odds, but different odds of getting something you might like. Um, Almost seems like opt, but I don't remember if you're surveilling or if it's scry. I almost want to lean towards scry and then draw. Curate. It's an instant for one and an island. Surveil 2. Look at the top two cards of your library. Put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest on top of your library in any order. Draw a card. Deep Analysis. It's a sorcery for 3 in an island. Target player draws 2 cards. Flashback. Pay 1 an island and pay 3 life. You may cast this card from your graveyard for its flashback cost, then exile it. Enchanted Surveillance. It's an enchantment for 1 in an island. You may look at an additional 2 cards each time you surveil. Exile Enchanted Surveillance. Shuffle your graveyard into your hand. So, I mean, that's pretty cool that you can surveil and then look at an additional 2 cards. And you have the ability, if your opponent doesn't have enchantment removal, to sacrifice this at any time to shuffle your graveyard into your hand. Given, depending on how many cards you're playing into your hand, you might want a lot of mana so you're not then discarding down to 7, or you would want a card that would allow you to have no maximum hand size. Next is Ifara's Dispersal. It's an instant for 2 in an island. This spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets an attacking creature. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Surveil 2. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, put any number of them into your graveyard, and the rest on top of your library in any order. Mole Drifter. It's a 2/2 elemental for 4 in an island. Has flying. When Mole Drifter enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards. Its evoke cost is 2 in an island. You may cast this spell for its evoke cost. If you do, it's sacrificed when it enters the battlefield. So, I mean, the evoke cost is 2 generic mana less, but you're sacrificing it when it hits the battlefield, so you're really just getting the enter the battlefield trigger of drawing 2 cards. So at that point, it's basically a sorcery and not a creature. But then if you have something to bring it back from the graveyard to the battlefield or something from the graveyard to your hand, you could play it as a creature later. Night Veil Sprite. It's a 1/2 fairy rogue for 1 in an island. It has flying. When Night Veil Sprite attacks, surveil 1. Look at the top card of your library you may put into your graveyard. Otherworldly Gaze. The instant for a single island. Surveil 3. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest on top of your library in any order. Flashback. 1 in an island. You may cast this card from your graveyard for its flashback cost, then exile it. Thoughtbound Phantasm. It's a 2/2 spirit for an island. Has Defender. Whenever you surveil, put a 1/1 counter on Thoughtbound Phantasm. As long as Thoughtbound Phantasm has 3 or more 1/1 counters on it, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So, I mean, it's a 2/2 for 1, which is kind of cheap but balanced, I guess, where it has Defender, but then you can put counters on it, and if it has 3 or more counters on it, it can attack. and was how many um, cards in this deck surveil. Chances are, if you put that out, you're probably going to be able to get 3 counters. Animate Dead. It's an enchantment aura. Enchant creature card in a graveyard. When animated dead enters the battlefield, if it's on the battlefield, it loses an enchant creature card in graveyard and, and gains enchant creature put onto the battlefield was animated dead. Return enchanted creature card to the battlefield under your control and attach to animated dead to it. When animated dead leaves the battlefield, that creature's controller sacrifices it. Enchanted creature gets -1, -0. So I guess if you're enchanting a creature card in a graveyard, but if it somehow goes back to the battlefield, it's forcing its owner to sacrifice it. At least that's how I'm reading the card. Necromancy. It's an enchantment for 2 in a swamp. You may cast Neuromancy as though it had flash. If you cast it any time a sorcery couldn't have been cast, the controller of the permanent it becomes sacrificed at the beginning of the next cleanup step. When necromancy enters the battlefield, if it's on the battlefield, it becomes an aura with enchant creature put onto the battlefield with necromancy. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control and attach necromancy to it. When necromancy leaves the battlefield, that creature's controller sacrifices it. So, kind of an odd way to bring a creature back because then if the enchantment leaves the battlefield, the creature that was brought back from the battlefield has to get sacrificed. So almost feels like creature removal was an extra step, except you're bringing the creature back to remove it later, possibly. Price of Fame. It's an instant for 3 in a swamp. This spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets a legendary creature. Destroy target creature. Surveil 2. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, then put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest on top of your library in any order. So it's a removal spell. It doesn't specifically have to target a commander, but if you're targeting a legendary creature, it goes from costing 3 in a swamp down to costing 1 in a swamp. So, I mean, for a commander deck, you're basically making it go from 4 mana cost down to 2 to target your opponent's commander. Ravenous Chupacabra. It's a 2/2 beast horror for 2 and 2 swamps. When Ravenous Chupacabra enters the battlefield, destroy target creature an opponent controls. So not only is it a creature, but it's a removal spell when it's entering the battlefield. Shriek Maw. It's a 3/2 elemental for 4 in a swamp. Has fear. The reminder text says this creature can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and or black creatures. When Shriek Maw enters the battlefield, destroy target non-artifact, non-black creature. Its evoke cost is 1 in a swamp. You may cast this spell as though this spell for its evoke cost. If you do, sacrifice it at when it enters the battlefield. So again, it's a creature for 5 mana or a um, instant or sorcery for 2 mana, and um, when it enters the battlefield, you're destroying target non-artifact, non-black creature. So you know, creature was it removal or just an instant sorcery, you know, removal spell for 3 less than the creature. Sinister Starfish. It's a 0/3 starfish for 1 in a swamp. You can tap it to surveil 1. Look at the top card of your library you may put into your graveyard. I mean, kind of interesting that, you know, it could be seen as a black version of Patrick Star. Not that I watched SpongeBob, but um, my dad used to, so I know a couple of the characters. Sire Connor the Grim. It's a 5/4 human knight for 3 and 2 swamps. It happens to be a legendary creature, so it could be a commander, but not in this deck, where this deck is black blue and this is just a mono black creature. Whenever another creature dies or a creature card is put into the graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sire Connor the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. So, not only when another creature's dying, but if it's being put in the graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, which would imply, you know, from your library or from your hand. So if for some reason your opponent made you discard a card, this would, and it happened to be a creature, this guy is pinging your opponent for 1 life. If you surveil and discard a creature, this card's pinging your opponent for 1 life. If your opponent's milling you and you mill a creature, this is pinging your opponent for 1 life. So, I mean, yes, it costs 5, but it's a 5/4 creature, and you're doing damage anytime a creature hits a graveyard. You can pay 1 in a swamp. Each player mills a card. In the reminder text, they each put the top card of their library into their graveyard. So not only can you deal damage to your opponent for creatures hitting the graveyard, you can pay 2 to potentially have however many players just, you know, milling cards and possibly putting creatures in their graveyard to have this ping them. That's pretty cool. Whispering Snitch. It's a 1/3 vampire rogue for 1 in a swamp. Whenever you surveil for the first time, each turn, Whispering Snitch deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain a life. And with how many things are allowing you to surveil, that's pretty beneficial. Demeter Spy Bug, the 1/1 insect for an island in a swamp, has flying and menace. The reminder text says this creature can't be blocked except by two or more creatures. Given it's a 1/1 unless it gets buffed. Whenever you surveil, put a 1/1 counter on Demeter Spy Bug. So I mean, you can buff it by surveilling, and like I was talking about in the last card, it has enough. This deck has enough things to surveil that that could be beneficial. Another two part card or two side. Oh, not like double sided, but two potential things. You could either do discovery, which is one and an island or swamp. It's a sorcery. Surveil two, then draw a card. To surveil two, look at the top two cards of your library, then put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest on top of your library in any order. The other side is dispersal, three, an island and a swamp. Each opponent returns a non-land permanent they control with the highest mana cost among permanents they control to its owner's hand, then discards a card. So, I mean, you're forcing your opponent to, um, put a permanent, um, obviously from the battlefield if it's a permanent, to their hand, and then, they're choosing what card to discard after that, which, if they had nothing in their hand before you made them return a card to their hand, they're discarding that card potentially. Disinformation campaign almost sounds like a political thing. It's an enchantment for one, an island in a swamp. When disinformation campaign enters the battlefield, you draw a card and each opponent discards a card. When you surveil, return disinformation campaign to its owner's hand. So I mean that's pretty cool that you get card advantage by drawing a card and forcing your opponent to discard a card at the same time. And with how many surveil cards that can come back to your hand, play it, as many times as you have mana, or play it on a different turn. Notion Rain. It's a sorcery for one, a swamp, and an island. Surveil two, then draw two cards. Nor Notion Rain deals two damage to you. So I mean that's a drawback that it's dealing two damage to you, but to surveil two and draw two, that's pretty good. Arcane Signet. It's in almost every command deck, just kind of like Soul Ring. Cost two. It's an artifact that costs two. You tap to add one mana of any color in your commander's identity. Demeter Signet. It's an artifact that costs two. You can pay one and tap it to add a island and a swamp. Everflowing Chalice. It's an artifact that costs zero. Multi-kicker two. You may pay an additional two any number of times as you cast the spell. Everflow Chalice enters the battlefield with a counter on it for each time it was kicked. Tap to add a colorless for each charge counter on Everflowing Chalice. So, it's a mana rock that, depending on the amount of mana you have, you can make this tap for a lot of mana if you do the multi kicker. Mind Stone. It's an artifact for 2. You can tap to add a colorless, or you can pay 1, tap, sacrifice Mind Stone to draw a card. Soul Ring. It's an artifact for 1 that you tap to add 2 mana. I mean, you're paying 1 to get 2 mana, so I mean, some might say it's broken, but it's basically, you know, a land, just you're getting colorless instead of, a color. Talisman of Dominance. It's an artifact for 2. You can tap for a colorless, or you can tap, add an island or a swamp. Talisman of Dominance deals 1 damage to you. So, kind of a mana rock that's either or, you're doing colorless, or one of the 2 colors. The drawback of the color, getting the color, is you're dealing a damage to yourself, but if you don't have that color land, it's helpful. And obviously, life's a resource. Thought Vessel. It's an artifact for 2. You have no maximum hand size, and it taps for colorless. Ash Barrens. It's a land that allows you to tap for a colorless, basic land cycling 1. Discard or pay 1, discard this card, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. So, it's kind of like a fetch land was only, instead of playing it and sacrificing it like Evolving Wilds, it's a basic land cycling, so you're discarding it to search for the land. And I mean, it's specifically searching for a basic land, so you can't search for a non-basic land, but kind of a trade-off, I guess. Bojuka Bog. I know this is from an older set, well, a reprint from an older set. I just don't remember how um, old this card is. It's a land. Bojuka Bog enters the battlefield tapped. When Bojuka Bog enters the battlefield, exile target player's graveyard. So if you're able to mill your opponent some, or just, you know, him was removal, slap this land down. Oh, exile your graveyard. They can't bring stuff back from their graveyards. Commander Tower, like Soul Ring, it feels like it's in a lot of commander decks. It's a land that taps for add 1 of any color in your commander's identity. Demir Aqueduct. The land Demir Aqueduct enters the battlefield tapped. When Demir Aqueduct enters the battlefield, return the land you control to its owner's hand. So, I mean, returning a land here on his hand could be a drawback, but in a landfall deck, that would also be helpful. Tap to add a island and a swamp. Myriad Landscape. It's a land. Myriad Landscape enters battlefield tapped. Tap to add a colorless, or you can pay to tap, sacrifice Myriad Landscape. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards that share a land type. Put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Port of Carfell. It's a land. Port of Carfell enters the battlefield tapped. Tap to add an island, or you can pay three an island and two swamps, sacrifice port of Carefield. Mill four cards, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. To mill a card, put the top card of your library into your graveyard. So, I mean, that ability seems kind of expensive. It's six mana, three and three symbols, sacrificing this land, and you're milling four cards. Like, yes, you're getting a creature back from your graveyard, but there's, I feel like there's better cards to get a creature back than, paying six mana and sacrificing land and milling four. Like, that's a lot and to get, something. Mystic Sanctuary, it's a land island. So where it specifies it's an island, it's searchable for like a basic land would be taps for an island. Mystic Sanctuary enters the battlefield tapped unless you control three or more other islands. When Mystic Sanctuary enters the battlefield, uh, untapped, you may put target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard on top of your library. So, very niche ability of, you know, being able to enter untapped, if you have three other islands, and it also gets you something back from your graveyard to your hand, or not to your hand, for an instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your top of your library. Reluctant, eh, Reluctant Airy Tower. It's a land. You have no maximum hand size. So this is the second card that does that, and it taps for one colorless. Rogue's Passage. It's also a land. Taps for one colorless, or you can pay four and tap. Target creature can't be blocked this turn, which obviously is helpful. If your commander's out, you pay four to make it, unblockable and swing with your commander. They have to take the commander damage unless they have something to redirect damage somehow. Tainted Isle. It's a land that taps for colorless, or you can tap for an island or swamp. Activate only if you control a swamp. Temple of the False God. The land. Tap to add two colorless. Activate only if you control five or more lands. So, kind of a pain that, if you get it in your starting hand, you can't use it until you have five land out. Casca's Dig Site. The land. Tap to add a colorless, or you can pay three and tap, surveil one. And then we got to the basic lands, the islands and swamps. And then at the back is the tokens. Um, so there's a total of 9 islands, or well, 9 basic land islands. And the same for swamps, or 9 basic swamps. And then as far as um, the tokens, one says copy and the backside's zombie. We have another copy was a zombie on the back. Uh, third copy was a zombie on back. Fourth copy was zombie on back. Then we have uh, looks like we four salamander warriors, which are 4-3 with no abilities, and on the back of those are again zombies, which happen to be 2-2s. And then we have the Sea's Blessing, because we did have that one card that had Ascend. And the reminder text for Sea's Blessing: once you have earned the favor of the guilds, the power of the guild pack is in your favor. Oh, okay, so that one's not a reminder text. I thought I was going to talk about the um, amount of permanents you needed. And then we have Visor of Many Faces for a token. It's a 0/0 token creature zombie shapeshifter cleric. You may have Visor of Many Faces enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it has no mana cost. It's white and it's a zombie in addition to other types. I don't remember which card made this token, but that's pretty cool. And then the backside of that one's another zombie. So hopefully you found some value in this. Consider checking out some of my other Commander related videos. Thanks and have a good day.